Leslie Rangel is investigating Oklahoma's faulty future.
Damage over the years caught on camera. And back in 2011, this Cowboys fan had no idea what was about to hit.
Well, Oklahoma State pulled out a squeaker there. I guarantee you that was Kansas. We're having an earthquake. Do you hear that?
A 5.6 magnitude just before 11 that night, the largest in recent Oklahoma history. And now research shows a bigger, stronger one could hit soon.
Isn't this lovely?
For 10 years, Jackie Dill has called this 1930s coil house home sweet home.
Up here on the roof, I want you to see, this really worries me. Hit so hard, we could hear the rafters creaking, right? We walked out, and do you see the bump in the roof where the rafters poking up?
Now, her house buckling each time the seismometers catch any ground quaking action.
When I moved in 2005, none of this was here, none of these cracks. Not a one.
But fast forward 10 years later, you wonder how it's still standing.
I now invest on lots of mortar for the rocks. I buy it by the bagfuls.
But a little mortar to help the visible cracks won't help the underlying problems.
We really plan to just live out the rest of our life here and, you know, be comfortable, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. We thought we had it all. We really did.
Now Jackie, like many Oklahomans, is waiting for the one that's sure to crumble her home.
There's a lot of us out here. What are we going to have to do to get their attention?
Attention, answers, anything on what to do if the big one hits.
It's unclear exactly how high we might go, and the predictions are upper 5, 6 range for most things that I've seen.
Todd Hallahan from OSU studies these quakes. His expertise, hydrogeophysics. Basically a fancy term meaning he's very into earthquakes right now.
Underneath any of these urban areas, whether it's Stillwater, Cushing, Oklahoma City, Guthrie, these cities are not built to seismic standards. They're not in LA.
Imagine if it hits right in the center of Oklahoma City. What would happen to the Devon Tower, Chesapeake Arena, our bridges, our roads?
We have a lot of buildings that were built with that earthquakes not even on the radar screen. So we would expect probably a fair bit of damage.
There's just so much. It's you know, I've done all my crying and now I'm just angry. I'm so angry.
And what about the state? What about rules and regulations?
Anything that has to do with the state, we might as well forget.
But we're not out ahead of it yet. We still have fires burning, and we're trying to get ahead of those fires, but we're not there yet. Real changing point, I think, was the Prague quake, because as a result of that, we had a hearing as to how we should proceed in the Prague area for oil and gas exploration and things.
Now, most people you ask think the Oklahoma Corporation Commission is sitting back watching the earthquakes happen, but they say that's not true. Our cameras were given a rare look at the work.
March of this year, we issued a directive that applied to over 300 disposal wells that dispose into the Arbuckle Formation that said, prove that you're not in the basement. In other words, you haven't drilled too deep. So the idea was to dial back the total volume for the area that's going down hole to a pre-seismicity level.
We wondered why it's taken until this year to see action. They say they were waiting on data from oil and gas companies, information that by law does not have to be shared, but now they're handing it over.
An arrangement was eventually come to where there's a regular exchange now between the oil and gas industry.
What they call a game changer in slowing down the quakes.
And all of a sudden, for the first time, we're seeing stressed faults. We're seeing where the basement faulting is.
But is the oil and gas industry being completely forthcoming?
As far as the data that the companies are giving to you, is there a chance that any of that data could be held back? It's like a child telling on themselves.
It's a great question, and it's a logical question, and people don't ask it often enough. It is being used, if you will, against them, and yet the data hasn't slowed. If anything, it's increased. The big problem we face right now is not that we don't have enough data to analyze. The big problem we have right now is we don't have the people to analyze it.
Seismometer. That's what we put out on the field.
Behind the scenes work to help stop the shaking.
It's crystal balling it, and that's quite tricky with earthquakes. Anybody who's tried to make earthquake predictions usually ends up wrong.
Eat it, sleep it, breathe it. This is the focus of the people down here, and they will not rest until we've done everything we can do.
Hey, what's going on?
But in rural Oklahoma, data doesn't mean much.
Come here, baby.
Just simple living and a call for immediate change.
She's spoiled. I'm really fighting tears because I've done a lot of crying and trying to figure out, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And if there's me, there's so many other people. It's not just me, you know, it's not just my story. It's thousands of stories. I don't know, it's our homes, it's where we live. It's my heart. And it's ripping it apart. That's what it's doing.